Hi, this is Mad Cat, the egalitarian that discusses this and that. Today we'll be discussing nomore.org and discover what it really is. As always, if I mispronounce your name, I apologize ahead of time. Alright, so I'm doing Nano right now. I'm not really being active on Tumblr, Twitter, or YouTube right now. And I'm not really going to be doing too many of these videos, but I saw this today. I saw this past weekend and decided that I wanted to do it. I was planning on doing a video for Halloween and bronyism and some feminist bullshit that I saw in there, but it's kind of past its moment now since Halloween is over. But decided against it. But I saw this and I had to do it. So I was. The TV was on this past weekend. Someone else was watching football. And I happened to walk by when there was this commercial for No More. It had actually a lot of NFL stars. It also seemed to have Michael Jordan on it for some reason. So I'm like, what the hell is this? It talked about ending domestic violence and sexual assault, but it had men on there. So I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe it's finally something that's going a step in the right direction. So I tried to look it up online and the site crashed. I couldn't get into the site. Maybe too many people are trying to access it at once. I mean, that used to happen back in the day. I don't see how that happens anymore. Maybe they had to take down the site for some reason. Who knows? But I accessed it later, and I was a little bit surprised by what I found. So I'm going to go ahead and go through it just a little bit. I'm not going to look at the about site, but not really read the whole thing to you. You can look for yourself. So when I go to the site, nomore.org, there's a big, kind of looks like a record. I'm probably dated myself there, but kind of looks like an old record for the big O right there for no. So together we can end domestic violence and sexual assault. Okay. Now the one thing that threw me off about this at first is like, well, where do they stand on the issue of domestic violence? And surely they don't want it against women. That's what everyone has agreed to, but very few have even talked about the issue that men face for both domestic violence and sexual abuse. There's only a few pocket resources out there that talk about it, and it mostly goes unnoticed by our society. So I'm like, okay, this seems like it might be egalitarian, that it's not so much feminist as it's looking at both issues. So what is No More? This is the about page. No More is a new unifying symbol designed to galvanize greater awareness and action to end domestic violence and sexual assault. Okay, so far so good. Supported by major organizations working to address these urgent issues, No More is gaining support with America nationwide, sparking new conversation about these problems and moving this cause on a higher public agenda. Okay, that sounds like a interesting mission statement. It doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Then it goes into the history of it, who's behind it. It talks a lot about that. Men's organizations like A Call to Men and Men Can Stop Rape. Men Can Stop Rape is, I don't know about A Call to Men, but Men Can Stop Rape is basically a place where people go to learn not to rape. Men are taught not to rape. Not women, men. And, domestic violence hotline, National Alliance to End Sexual Violence. I've heard things about the National Domestic Violence Hotline, that it's only really designed to cater to women abuse victims. I've heard this about a lot of hotlines. I don't know if the national one is any different, but I've heard that a lot of them will either make fun of men if they call in claiming to be victims, or tell them to call another phone number, which tells them that they're the abuser and not the victim. And also the U.S. Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women. There is no U.S. Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Men. I mean, one doesn't exist at all. So what do we do? Well, that's a very good question. What do they do? No More is spotlighting an invisible problem in a whole new way. Okay, up until now, domestic violence and sexual assault on women has not been an invisible problem. It has been an invisible problem on men, and that's why I'm taking interest in this, because I want to see if they are taking it. So I'm hoping that they're talking about men. The first unifying symbol to express support for ending domestic violence and sexual assault, No More can be used by anyone who wants to normalize the conversation around these issues and help end domestic violence and sexual assault. Okay, I guess if we need to have a symbol to this problem, I guess this one could do. Our vision is that No More will be everywhere, on websites, t-shirts, and billboards. Organizations and corporations, large and small, will embrace this symbol as their own. Okay, more about using this as a symbol that doesn't really tell me what you do. When an abuse case makes media headlines, you will instantly see No More No More being tweeted, discussed on Facebook, worn as jewelry and on t-shirts, made into buttons, posted in classroom, offices, billboards, and grocery stores across the country. So every time this comes on media, we're going to see all of this stuff? Is that what you're saying? So that's what your sentence is sounding like. That whenever I see domestic violence on the news, I'll walk outside and there's a t-shirt? No More will help end the stigma, shame, and silence of domestic violence and sexual assault. How? How will you do that? This is what you do, not, a general mission statement. No More will help increase funding to prevent domestic violence and sexual assault. Okay, that's the first thing that you've said that actually says that. I'm interested in see how you're going to do that, but okay. Like the pink ribbon did for breast cancer and the red ribbon did for HIV/AIDS, No More will help to change behaviors that led to this violence. So basically, they just want to be a symbol that's used so people will start talking about it. They're not really offering any solutions. It's like, next time you hear about domestic violence, think of us. I mean, we're not going to really do anything, but we want you to think about us. So, yeah, it's not really telling me what they're all about. So, the next part goes into why should I care? Well, the next time you're in a room with 6 people, think about this. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience violence from their partners in their lifetimes. 1 in 3 teens experience sexual or physical abuse or threats from a boyfriend or girlfriend in 1 year. 1 in 5 women are survivors of rape. 1 in 2 women and 1 in 5 men have experienced some form of sexual victimization in their lives. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men were sexually abused before the age of 18. Then they have a little thing about this. Hold on, inhaler. Sorry you had to hear that. These are not numbers. There are mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, co-workers, and friends. They're the person you confide in most at work, the guy you play basketball with, the people in your book club, your poker buddy, teenage best friend, or your teen herself. The silence and shame must end for good. If we read this epically, it sounds a little more awesome. Okay, a couple things that jump out at me about these statistics. One, in every instance, it's basically saying women have it a lot worse. You're telling me that 50% of women have experienced some form of sexual victimization in their lives? There are 100 million women and 100 million men in the United States. Those are estimations, not exact figures. You're telling me that 50 million women in the United States has had some form of sexual victimization? That's a lot. And then even 20 million men have experienced it. That's still a high number. And then, so in every instance, though, it's basically like, well, men have it, but women have it worse. But then there's one thing that it says: 1 in 5 women are survivors of rape. Do you notice anything wrong with that? Well, one, that statistic has been debunked many times. That statistic is from a research study done in the 80s by Mary Koss, who created a test that no matter how a woman answered it, more than likely it would state that she was a victim of rape. It also had a very small sample size, and it basically assumed that 1 in 5 women were survivors of rape. This is the same woman who went to the CDC and said that men cannot be the victims of rape, that force to penetrate is not rape, because rape is only when a person is penetrated without permission, which does happen to men, but more often than not, they are forced to penetrate another person. That's considered a sexual assault, but not rape. So when the CDC reports on rape, they're only representing women. So, yeah, this does not appear to me to be egalitarian. For one, they're using incorrect statistics. So I kind of wanted to research this a little bit more. They're using incorrect statistics, and they're kind of misrepresenting men. So first, let me go ahead and read where they got this information from. So the first resource was from the National Centers for Injury Prevention and Control, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey 2010 Summer Report. That was one report. Teen Dating Abuse 2009 Key Top-Line Findings, Liz Claiborne, Inc., and Family Violence Prevention Fund. And U.S. Centers for Disease Control 2005 study on long-term consequences of childhood sexual abuse by gender of victim. 3 studies that got them all of this information, which have been proven to be false information. So, yeah, this is very much a feminist organization. So they go into what is domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior used to establish power and control over another person through fear and intimidation. Yes, that is true. Often including the threat or use of violence, some signs of abuse relationship include abusive relationship, exerting strict control, financial, social, or appearance. Yes, that is true. That is a sign of domestic violence. Needing constant contact, including excessive texts and calls. Oh, yeah, I would say that that's a form of abuse. Okay. Insulting a partner in front of other people. Okay. Extreme jealousy. Okay, most likely. I mean, there are ways that you can, well, I guess in an extreme sense. Okay, so yeah, domestic violence. Showing fear around a partner. How is that domestic violence? I mean, it's not giving any specific information. Are you saying that if you notice someone who shows fear around their partner, that's an indication that there's domestic violence? You're not specifying what you think on this. So how am I supposed to know how to look out for it if you don't give me specifics? Isolating from friends and family. Okay, that's fair, but I mean, how am I supposed to see that they are fearful of around their partner if they're being isolated from friends and family? Yes, I know it's just one possible sign, but frequently canceling of plans at the last minute. That's not really a symptom of domestic violence, or rather, it could be a symptom of something else that's not 100%. If someone does that, it's domestic violence. And it's usually one of those things that has to be in combination with something else for it to be an indication of it. Unexplained injuries or explanations that don't quite add up. Yeah, that can be for domestic violence. Okay, so what about sexual assault? Well, sexual assault is a crime motivated by a need to control, humiliate, and harm. Yes. Perpetrators use sexual assault as a weapon to hurt or dominate others. Yeah. Sexual assault is forced or coerced sexual contact without consent. Yes. Consent is the presence of a clear yes, not the absence of a no. That's up for debate on that one. Let me address that in just a moment. Let me read through this. It can take the form of rape, incest, child sexual assault, molestation, oral sex, harassment. Harassment's kind of up for debate on that one. Exposing, flashing. So is this saying that if a girl flashes herself in like at a concert, that can be considered sexual assault? Because I'm sure no one would ever actually make that claim. Forcing a person to pose for sexual pictures. Yeah. Fondling or unwanted sexual touching above their clothing. Forcing, which may include but is not limited to use or displaying of a weapon. Use or display of a weapon. Physical battering. Immobilization of the victim. Okay, so most of these I can agree with. As far as the consent of a clear yes, they're talking about the California law, which a lot of other states are wanting to pass. I can understand why some people would want this, but the problem is that sex is not always communicated with a confirmed yes. And oftentimes body language can say something else about it. But the California law requires that at every step of the way, you have to get a clear yes that you can do this. Can I kiss you? Yes. Can I touch you? Yes. Can I fondle your breasts? Yes. Can I kiss your body? Yes. Can I play with your genitals? Yes. Can I finger you? Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if sex was like that? And that's what the feminists want. They have to get a clear yes every step of the way. And that if they say no at any one time, then you have to stop. However, the problem with that new law is, what if the person still says after the fact, well, I told them no and they continued anyways, and you say, well, I asked them every step of the way and they said you can stop asking and I still did, and they said yes each time. It now becomes he said, she said sort of situation. And it's like that anyways, but with that, a person could go through all of those steps and still be accused of rape. And they could have said, well, you know, I wanted him kissing me and doing all of these things, but I said no to like oral sex and he still put his cock in my mouth. So it's rape, even though I said yes to everything else. I mean, they could go with that defense, or they could just lie about it. And a lot of people are like, well, only 5%, 2%, 5%, 10% of all rape claims are false reports. I'm sorry, but the report's higher than that. That statistic comes from the FBI, and that's just a guess. They don't actually know. And there's been a lot of suggestion that the number is a lot higher than that. I don't know the exact figure, but based on some of the studies that I've seen, I wager that it's between about 10 to 20%. Ooh, I have a viewer. That's cool. Hi, viewer. I'm sure I'm boring you. All right. So I disagree with that yes means yes. I mean, the thing is that no should mean no. That if a person doesn't want to do it, they have to give an absolute no. But the yes means yes. I mean, someone said to me that the reason why this law is necessary is that people are afraid to say no. Well, if they're afraid to say no, won't they be afraid not to say yes? I mean, that doesn't exactly solve the problem. They're like, well, they're too afraid to say no. So they're not going to be too afraid to not say yes. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if they're afraid to say no, and no means no, then if you say, do you want to have sex, what's going to get them to be even more brave to say yes at that point? I mean, to say no at that point. It seems to me that if they're afraid to say no, they'll say yes no matter what law is in place. And that they said yes, and you can still be charged with rape even if the person says yes, because you should have known that they actually didn't want to have sex, and that's how the law works. So it's just asinine. It's pointless laws just to make to make criminals out of more people, so women can feel better about themselves. I'm sorry, but that is what it is. The harassment. Well, lately, a lot of women have been saying that getting catcalls is a form of harassment. There was a person who did a YouTube video where he went around and grabbed women's asses and said that it was a prank. No, I agree. That's, sexual assault right there. That's harassment right there. And I feel that that person should be arrested. But catcalling, there's another video that came out where a man showed that the exact same thing happens to him. It happens for both sexes, but that's not a form of sexual assault. That happens. That's just human nature. It's happened for a very long time. It's probably going to continue to happen for a very long time. Exposing and flashing, I can understand how someone would say that that's sexual assault. And yeah, if I go out in public and I expose myself to the public, yeah, I should be arrested for that. But so should women. And women are less likely to be arrested for something like that than men are. So, yeah, anytime you touch someone without consent, and there's an intent behind it for something sexual. I mean, if I accidentally bump into someone, yeah, that's an accident. I touched them without their permission, but it was an accident. It's not sexual assault. But if I touch someone intentionally, it doesn't even matter if it's not on a sexual part of their body, that's assault. And if it is on a sexual part of their body, then that's sexual assault. So yeah, I agree with most of that. But this really seems weighted against men. This is really just a policy for women, and this has to go back to Ray Rice. That's all this is. The NFL, had a coalition now of women running their domestic violence department. They probably put this together to say, hey, we'll get this organizations and say we support it. And you know what Ray Rice did was bad. I agree. He should have been punished. I agree. He shouldn't have been kicked off the NFL for that, though, because that sends the wrong precedents. What he should have done is gone to some sort of therapy or counseling or marriage counseling, been fired altogether, because that doesn't just affect him. It affects the woman that was abused in that video who chose to forgive him and marry him anyways. because now she's affected by that decision and no one cares. Oh, well, she's just an abuse victim. Of course she forgave him. Yeah, feminists, you want women to have a choice, but then you get at them for making the choice that you don't agree with. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, and he ends up getting, he shouldn't have gotten a 2-game suspension. I agree with that. He should have gotten a lot worse. Maybe he should have been like suspended for a year and attend counseling until the counselor felt that he was ready to stop it, that he had learned his lesson, that he won't do it again. He learned some therapy tricks to control himself. That's what the first response shouldn't be. Not that, 6 months later they found a video that shows more abuse and that, oh, well, we're going to kick you off altogether. And now Ray Rice is suing the NFL, and I hope Ray Rice wins. I don't agree with what he did, but I don't agree with what the NFL did. And they only did it to cater to feminist groups. And that's what all of this is about, is catering to feminism, to get feminism off their backs. Instead of doing the right thing, they're just pandering, just like any other business will do. And this is what feminism for the NFL is going to look like. Yes, these players do some awful things. They deserve to be punished for them. But we're not going to solve the problem just by, throwing them down a big dark pit and throwing away the key and hope that the problem goes away on its own. You want to help people, get them into counseling, get them into some sort of therapy to help them work through their issues and give them the opportunity to do something about that. Now, if there's a second offense after doing that, then yeah, go ahead and ban them for life. I agree with that decision, but at least give them the opportunity to make reparations for what they did, to rehabilitate from what they did. And all of this nomore.org is just feminism disguised as egalitarianism. And I really had a hope that nomore.org was going to be egalitarian, and it's not. And this is evident by the fact that you're using CDC information. Instead of going out there and researching for themselves and getting the actual truth of it, this is just a feminist organization that's saying, let's pull the CDC results because that favors us. Let's throw it in there. Because how many men are survivors of rapes? Well, according to this, I can't find out. So I guess that means men are not victims of rape, which is bullshit. It is complete bullshit. This is the kind of thing that makes me sick. Hell, they're all about this domestic violence, sexual abuse. Why don't you contact a Voice for Men? Why don't you get them involved in this? Oh, because they'll tell you that your stats are bullshit? I mean, I'm not an MRA, but if there's one organization that seems to have men's back, it's a Voice for Men. I could go on for hours about this. I'm not going to do that. I do want to keep this video short today. So I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. And yeah, I'm flabbergasted, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. This is going to happen, and no one's ever going to take the issue of male domestic violence or sexual abuse seriously, ever. It's going to need to really take something from men and from the MRA and egalitarians to really address the proper issue here. Now, yes, I can agree that women might have it worse in certain areas. But in a lot of ways, some of the domestic violence research studies and sexual assault has stated that it's about even between men and women. But also these studies don't take prison into consideration. And that the amount of rapes that happens within prisons, some studies have shown it to be actually pretty high. But those are not put into consideration for these kinds of studies. And until such a time that an actual study comes forward, we cannot rely on these statistics. Now, I've done a little bit of my own research on the rape statistic, and I've also seen other studies that have done it, and my conclusion was the same as those other studies. It's about 1 in 20 at its worst. And that's a lot more reasonable that out of 100,000 women in the United States, that 5 million of them have been raped within their lifetimes. But if we listen to what feminism has to say, it's closer to 20 million or 25 million. And if that's the case, then that is a pandemic. But the crime statistics do not support that. Anyways, I'm preaching at this point. I only meant to talk about nomore.org and the NFL. I don't like what's happening with the NFL, but unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to change it. So all of those people who enjoyed the NFL for what it is, say goodbye to it, because in 10 years' time, there's going to be drastic changes to it, and it's no longer going to be the thing that we once loved about it. Now, yes, I do agree that NFL players should be punished for their actions. They shouldn't be treated like gods. You want to play football, then you got to stick to a strict social contract, just like every other human being in the world. But basically saying that men have it better than women in all aspects of life, that's where I draw the line. Anyways, thanks for listening. This is Mad Cat signing off.